and I'm gonna show you a video because there's an important development happening in the global communist movement. You know, there are different organizations that unite communists from around the world. Right? There's the international International Conference of Communist and Workers' Parties, Tyler in Missouri. Right? There's the International Conference of Communist and Workers' Parties that exists, which kind of holds together a lot of the various communist parties of the world. There's a bunch of different Trotskyite Fourth Internationals. The Workers' Party of Belgium has something called the International Communist Seminar. They used to have for a while, and there are different groupings of communists from around the world. And this latest situation with the conflict in Ukraine, this has led to a serious regroupment in the global communist movement. And the Center for Political Innovation, as much as we are a US-based organization, we have international friends and international ties. And there is a new international alliance of communist groupings. We're not a party, but communist groupings that has emerged. And it's called the World Anti-Imperialist Platform. The World Anti-Imperialist Platform. And I can point you toward the website. The website is called WAP21.org. And it is a grouping of international communist parties that have come together to basically take a solid position on international events around 14 points. It's called the Paris Declaration. And it's around, I believe it's 11 actually, 11 points. And the Center for Political Innovation has decided to sign on to the World Anti-Imperialist Platform. So I'm going to actually show a video of Jyoti Brar, my good friend, explaining the Paris Declaration and why this is so important, because there's so much confusion in the international communist movement. So this is Jyoti Brar explaining the World Anti-Imperialist Platform and why the Center for Political Innovation, I mean, I guess she's not explaining about why we've signed on to it, but she's explaining the Paris Declaration, the World Anti-Imperialist Platform. So here she goes.
Most of the parties and the political organizations.
Thank you, comrades. Thank you for a really inspiring day. It's been wonderful to hear so many speeches and to find out there are so many parties who hold true to a scientific socialist analysis of the world and are doing what they can to bring that to the people. I'm not going to say very much beyond reading the declaration. I know that you've all read it already, but I think we need to, at the end of this day, we need to hear it again and really think about what it means. Just very briefly, by way of introduction, I feel today we're facing in the world a Zimmerwald moment. I'm sure I don't have to explain to people in this room what that means. Just as in 1915, when Lenin led the movement of revolutionary forces against the rotten reformism that had taken hold of working-class parties across Europe, today we also must offer some clarity and create a pole of attraction to the anti-imperialist forces who are being misled by revisionists of all kinds, many of whom claim to be updating Lenin, but who are in fact putting Lenin into the dustbin and bowing to the propaganda of the imperialist bourgeoisie. And you can't help but notice the arrogance of the people who claim to be in a position to update, reinterpret, and rewrite Lenin. You know, I come from a tradition that says first study, first understand, before you put yourself in a position where you're ready to tell anybody anything. We often cite the importance of Lenin's updating of Marxism to this new stage of the development of capitalism, this imperialist stage. But no one could deny the intense theoretical study that underpinned Lenin's epoch-defining works. You read how many volumes of Lenin's collective works build up to his writing of the thesis of imperialism. Read that book again and again and again and look at how much work has gone into what he says there. No one could deny the intense theoretical study of all of Lenin's epoch-defining works, or that his assertion that capitalism had reached a new stage was thoroughly proved by him in his works, and also proven by history. The correctness of Lenin's scientific discoveries was proven in the crucible of practice of the Bolshevik Party. Our movement, on the other hand, has inherited a state of deep theoretical confusion and ignorance. It's really a sign of the times that there are many parties in the oppressed countries that are not socialist, but who are able clearly to understand the primary characteristics of the world situation, whilst many so-called socialists find it impossible to agree about the nature of Russia and China and the definition of imperialism.
And what she's saying there is so true, by the way. Communists in the developing world and communists that are in power in places like China and People's Korea and Vietnam and in Latin America and Venezuela, they support Russia and China against US imperialism. They know that Russia and China are not imperialists. It's Western liberal Marxists that are taking pro-imperialist positions. She's absolutely right, but I'm going to let Jyoti go on. She's actually going to start reading in a minute the World Anti-Imperialist Platform, of which the Center for Political Innovation has just signed on to.
And this question is not abstract, comrades. As many here in this room have pointed out today, without a correct theoretical orientation, we cannot hope to give the right direction to our practical work. Those workers who are under the influence of wrong ideas are being demobilized from meaningful and militant anti-war activity. And this is not only tragic for them, but dangerous for our movement and the prospects of our success. So now I'm going to read to you what we are calling the Paris Declaration on the rising tide of global war and the tasks of anti-imperialists.
This document she's reading, the CPI are now signatories of this document.
And I hope that all those who are not yet ready to sign this declaration will go away after today, think more, and come back and join us later. The declaration remains open. Our movement is a movement that expects to grow. Today is not the end of this project, but the beginning. We stand at a moment of grave peril for workers and oppressed peoples everywhere, in which the imperialist war drive is pushing us towards a third world war and a nuclear conflagration. Even as NATO's aggression in Ukraine is failing, both militarily and economically, the USA's desperation to save its hegemonic position in the world means it cannot back down, but is instead looking for ways to expand and prolong the war. In the face of all experience, it seems that the imperialists still hope they can find a way to wear down all resistance to their rule and come out on top. They have to hope that, don't they? As a result, we face the prospect of the Ukraine war spilling over into neighbouring countries in Europe and Central Asia, and also of the outbreak of hostilities in several other theatres further east. Recent US provocations in Taiwan, alongside its ceaseless ratcheting up of tensions with the DPRK and with China on every front, make this all too clear. At this moment of historic importance, we, the undersigned parties, agree that the following essential points must be made clear to the masses of the world and should guide our anti-war and anti-imperialist growth. First, that the conflicts that have already or are threatening to break out are not isolated or local affairs, but are integral parts of the USA's drive to retain its global hegemony. Second, that the present war in Ukraine is not the result of Russian aggression, but of this Western imperialist drive to war.
Absolutely right.
And in particular, the war drive of the USA.
That's right. This war in Ukraine was manufactured by the United States. They overthrew the government of Ukraine in 2014 and installed a fanatically anti-Russian government in Kiev. They prevented the Minsk agreement from being implemented and allowed and armed the Ukrainian government while it bombed and murdered its own people for 8 years. They facilitated Ukraine in making noise about getting nuclear weapons and joining NATO and threatening Russia. And Russia got to the point where people were being bombed and killed, and it had taken in millions of refugees, and they had no choice but to move in and protect the peoples of the eastern regions. The United States created this crisis.
Third, that the war really began when the USA and its allies financed, armed and organized a fascist coup in Kiev in 2014, and that the Russian side, in its alliance with the peoples of the Donbass, is engaged in a war of self-defense and national liberation against imperialist attack.
Yep.
Fourth, that the war drives against China and the DPRK are also a result of imperialist aggression, and that no matter who fires the first shot, if the threatened conflicts break out in Korea or Taiwan, those wars will also be wars of anti-imperialist self-defense and national liberation waged by the Korean and all the Chinese people.
Yep, absolutely. If China has to go to war over Taiwan, that will be the fault of the United States. That will not be the fault of China. That'll be the endless provocations from the United States, the endless efforts to incite it. And the people of Taiwan don't want it. They just voted for the KMT in big numbers because the KMT is less hostile to the mainland. People of Taiwan don't want it. They don't want a war. And it will be the United States using the lives of Taiwan, the people on the island of Taiwan, as pawns to try and threaten China. And just like Ukraine, or just like with North Korea, if a war erupts in North Korea or Taiwan, that will be the fault of the United States.
Fifth, that Russia and China's ability to defend themselves and others does not indicate expansionist ambitions or imperialist economics. It is based in decades of planning for self-defense.
Exactly. Russia and China have been under attack since the moment they broke free from Western capitalism, and they are defending themselves. They are not expansionist. They're not trying to exploit countries. They actually do the opposite. The Belt and Road, the Eurasian Economic Union,
initiated by the socialist governments of the USSR and the People's Republic of China. And if you want proof of that, just look at what kind of armies Russia and the USA have in the Ukraine. The imperialist media constantly talk about how the Soviet air defences are the best in the world. Air defences. What do the USA invest in? Bombers. Just think about that when you're thinking about the characterization of these two armies. It's not just armies bad, as the kind of vulgar pacifists want to tell you, who are subservient to bourgeois ideology. There are two types of armies in this conflict, and they're very differently constituted and used. There is no economic data to justify characterizing China or Russia as imperialist. These are countries that do not live by super exploiting or looting the world.
Absolutely.
They do not put other countries into military, technological, or debt slavery. On the contrary, the beneficial terms of trade and the technological and military assistance they offer are giving smaller developing countries the chance to break out of imperialist enslavement. 7. That Russia and China are the targets of imperialist aggression because both, by retaining their own independence and by assisting other nations to gain theirs, they represent a serious threat to the imperialist world hegemony. 8. That the growing alliance between Russia and China offers hope to the people of the world. Hope of an alternative to US domination and imperialist super-exploitation.
Yep, absolutely it does. Absolutely it does.
A strong anti-imperialist camp is our people's best defense against the aggressive plans of the bloodthirsty NATO alliance.
Absolutely. We should love Russia and China. and the role they're playing in the world, rolling back the power of US imperialism, allowing countries in Africa and Asia and Latin America to build themselves up and bring their people out of poverty. We should love Russia and China. They are the good guys on the global stage. They're not imperialist rivals. They are the good guys.
Our best defense against the looming threat of nuclear war. 9. That anti-war activists must mobilize the masses in their countries for a campaign of active non-cooperation. This is what anti-war work really looks like, comrades. Non-cooperation with the imperialist war effort aimed at sabotaging NATO's war machinery in every way possible. We must refuse to fighting or resist NATO's armies, whether direct armies or proxy armies. We must refuse to transport NATO's men and material. We must refuse to allow NATO's bases to operate unimpeded on our territories. We must refuse to manufacture or supply NATO's armaments and other vital equipment. We must refuse to broadcast, print or distribute imperialist propaganda lies. And we must refuse to cooperate with imperialist trade and sanctions wars. The working class has power. The working class needs to learn to use its power. Our job is to help them, first to understand it, and second to organise and use it, comrades. 10th, that the accelerating war drive, the economic crisis, the hunger crisis, the environmental crisis, all the crises we see in front of us, make it abundantly clear that the need to remove the imperialist economic system is more urgent than ever. And finally, that the slogans of true anti-imperialists in this time must be defeat for the NATO-led imperialist alliance, victory to the resistance, no cooperation with imperialist war. Thank you.
And yeah, I'm proud to say the Center for Political Innovation, the CPI, we are signers of that document. But I'm going to read to you the names of the communist parties and groups around the world that have already signed on to it, because it's not a small list and it's an important list. First, the Communist Party of Great Britain, Marxist-Leninist. That's Jyoti Brar, Harpal Brar. Second, all right, I'll just keep reading them. The People's Democratic Party of South Korea, which is a communist group in South Korea. Korea is One in Belgium, which is a group that supports peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula in Belgium. The Baltic Platform, the Communist Party of Kyrgyzstan, the Hungarian Workers' Party, the Communist Party of Italy, the Italian Communist Party, the Communist Party of Switzerland, the Spanish Avant-Garde in Spain, the Eastern Initiative, the New Communist Party of Yugoslavia, the National Association of Communists of France, the Pole of Communist Revival in France, the Chilean Communist Party Proletarian Action, the Socialist Workers' Party of Croatia, the Platform for Independence of Greece, the Communist Party of Peru, Patria Roja, Red Homeland, the Collective Struggle for the Revolutionary Reunification of Humanity in Greece, the People's Party of Panama, the Communist Party of Spain, the New Communist Party of Montenegro, and the United Socialist Party of Venezuela. Those are the parties that have so far signed. But soon, the name Center for Political Innovation will be on that list. And I am very proud to know that that's happening, because at this point, more than ever, we need to realign the global communist movement and make clear that anti-imperialism is where it's at. Russia and China are not imperialist countries. The US imperialists are the main danger, and the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared. But revolution is the main trend in the world today.